In my way of thinking, anxiety is another word for fear. Fear being the bottom line issue that's being dealt with. But how anxiety is experienced might not be really obvious that it's fear-based. It's one of the number one complaints that people walk into a counseling session with is anxiety. If you haven't hit the like or subscribe button, please do so. We would love for you to be able to know about all the different programs that we're offering. Hello, welcome to our newly formed YouTube channel, A Better Way to Good Mental Health. My name is Robert Johnson. I'm the co-owner of A Better Way Counseling Service in Vancouver, Washington. The purpose of this channel is to present concepts and ideas that help individuals, couples, and families have better mental health. I believe this will be helpful for any human being who wants a better quality of life, and certainly for any person working in the counseling or mental health field who wants to learn more methodology in psychotherapy. And I want to start out by talking about why somebody would go to counseling. And I think there's one overarching answer to have a better quality of life, period. It's to have a better quality of life. If you're coming in because you're experiencing depression and counseling works, it improves the quality of your life. If you're having a difficult or challenging relationship and the counseling helps with that relationship, it's improving the quality of your life. So there are a lot of other reasons that people come to counseling, possibly relationship-oriented or career-oriented, or they're experiencing ADHD or codependency or PTSD or unresolved trauma of some sort. But all of these issues are affecting their well-being and how they feel in their life. The stigma of counseling, is all about, you got to be crazy to go to counseling, right? Most therapists are not working with people who have really high acuity or who would be, use the colloquial term crazy or insane. Most people who come to counseling are pretty healthy and want a better life. They have some issues, but they want a better life. They're pretty motivated to have a higher quality of life. There are community mental health agencies that work with people with more serious problems, but the average therapist out there is not necessarily working with that high acuity. Some do, but a lot don't. And so counseling is something that everybody on the planet can benefit from. It simply gives you the opportunity to learn more about why you do what you do, why you feel the way you feel, why you struggle where you struggle, why you succeed where you succeed, and simply understanding who you are on a more intuitive, a more aware, and on a deeper level, however you want to describe that. That knowledge of what motivates you, what prompts you to do what you do, what causes you distress and consternation, that knowledge helps you correct the way you think, the way you feel, the way you act, which helps create a much higher quality of life. Isn't anybody on the planet who can't benefit from that? Some people at certain times in their life need it more than they might at other times in their life. Going through transitions, going through change, going through difficult situations. There can be a lot of different reasons that a person is compelled to walk into the door of a therapist's office or make that phone call, if you will, to get counseling services. So my hope is anybody watching these videos will have an opportunity to try some of the things that we're talking about, whether they're going to a therapist or not, to help their life. And this is not a replacement for counseling by any means. I don't believe this is a replacement for therapy. But I think there are going to be ideas and methods here that can help whether you go to a counselor or not. And certainly, if you're hoping to be a therapist, I think there's some things you can learn from these videos. Right now, with the pandemic going on worldwide, anxiety is going through the roof. A lot of people struggled with it before the pandemic, and a lot more are struggling with it now. So I want to talk about what anxiety is and some ideas on how to deal with it. In my way of thinking, anxiety is another word for fear. Fear being the bottom line issue that's being dealt with. But how anxiety is experienced might not be really obvious that it's fear-based. It can be about feeling unsettled. It can be about not being able to relax. It can be about getting revved up and worried to the point of it being panic. It can be about not being able to stop doing things because the belief is if I do more and I get things more correct, then my anxiety or fear might go away. It's one of the number one complaints that people walk into a counseling session with is anxiety. So I want to talk a little bit about how to deal with anxiety. And to do that, we need to talk about how to deal with fear. And so when we think about that in those terms, something bad might happen can mean something dramatic and big or something small. When we think about anxiety as fear in American culture, American language has a bunch of different terms for fear. We have worry, which is a form of fear. We have terror, which is a form of fear. The difference is the amount of fear, how much you're experiencing at any given time. Fear is an emotion that is particularly problematic because our nervous system and our brain and our consciousness cannot sustain a high degree of fear for very long. So what ends up happening, we go into, you've heard this term probably before, fight or flight, and I add a whole bunch of more F words to that. We might freeze, we might go fetal, and we have other ways that we deal with fear. But what happens is our consciousness, our nervous system is designed to light up on fear. And anxiety is a state of fear that's kind of operating in the background on an ongoing basis. And so we're easily activating that part of our consciousness that's worried about something or concerned about something or outright afraid of something, or maybe even going into more of a panic or terror state. And whether the fear is imagined or real doesn't matter. Our consciousness experiences it the same. But whether it's worry or whether it's outright terror, it's the same origin in that it's based on a belief that something bad might happen. Whether the thing that we're concerned about is actually happening or not is irrelevant. So I might be thinking a lion is coming at me and my body and my nervous system is reacting to this lion charging at me, when really it's just a kitty cat crossing the street. Our nervous system is designed to respond to a threat. It's how humans survived on the planet. 100,000 years ago, if we were out on the Serengeti and a lion was running at you, you had to either fight or flight. You had to either fight the lion or you had to run away, or you weren't going to survive. We are still tuned to have that reaction to all kinds of fear. It could be a simple fear, gosh, I think my boss is upset with me, but they're not telling me. Or my coworkers are conspiring against me. Or my partner's not being honest with me. We can have all kinds of fears that light up our nervous system and create angst in our consciousness. We're going through a pandemic, which is also going to increase anxiety, and it's going to take away one of the most effective ways of dealing with fear, which is social connection. So we're really tuned to have a lot of anxiety in our culture right now. And unfortunately, here in America, and I think it's different in different countries, but it's probably universal to some degree, but here in America, we're fed a diet of fear on a daily basis. You turn on the news media, particularly cable news media, whether it's media geared towards the right side of the politics or geared towards the left side of the politics, doesn't matter. It's fear-based. There's a phrase in the news media, if it bleeds, it leads. And you will see all kinds of fear-based news, as well as anger-based news now, designed to get you scared and angry. What an incredible recipe for disaster for anxiety. And so what can you do? You want to identify what the belief is. That allows you to do two things. It allows you to identify with whether the belief is based in reality or not. And it also allows you an opportunity to deal with that belief, or what I call dispute it if the belief is not based in reality. A lot of anxiety is based on beliefs that aren't real. Or if they are real, they're nowhere as big as we're making them out to be. Sometimes when we say something out loud to a friend or a trusted individual in our life, we come to realize that thinking in our own consciousness isn't always as healthy as saying it out loud, which is, part of the basis of the counseling profession is saying something out loud to a professional. But we can have that conversation with people that we trust. We can have it with a variety of different people in our lives. The key is to identify the belief. So one of the primary ways that we talk about dealing with anxiety in counseling sessions is to ask if the fear-based belief is happening for real right now or not. So let's say, for example, I have somebody in a counseling session who says they're really get anxious at night because they're afraid someone's going to break into their house. They're really worried someone's going to break into their house. And so I will have them imagine that moment. They're at home and imagine saying to themselves, is that happening right now? And if the answer is no, and often in this scenario it is no, then you're going to say out loud, that's not happening right now. This is not happening right now. This fear that I'm experiencing is not occurring in this moment. So another way to deal with anxiety is to develop a mindfulness practice in your life. The first thing that comes to mind when you think of mindfulness, you think of meditation. And meditation is certainly a form of mindfulness and is an incredibly effective tool to help you deal with angst in your life. It provides a lot of other benefits also. But mindfulness doesn't have to be just meditation. It can be getting grounded. It can be taking a moment and breathing and intentionally telling yourself you're going to relax and you're going to decrease your pace of breathing and your heart rate and how fast you might be moving. It can be simply, I'm going to grab a hold of a rail on a deck or hold onto a branch of a tree, or just imagine the electrical current in your body, if you will, your energy just coming down and out through the bottom of your feet or your hands if you're holding on to something. It can be an idea of just decreasing the activity in your consciousness and in your body. Just imagining it flowing out of you. And there are a lot of other ways. You can do mindfulness while standing in the line at the grocery store, while being stuck in traffic. In any situation that you choose to consciously slow your consciousness down, to slow your pace of thinking down, to slow the intensity that you're experiencing in any given moment. And this is a practice. This is something you learn how to do. It's not something we know naturally to do. Some people may do it naturally, but you practice it. You practice changing your pace of thinking. Some people just have a naturally high-strung disposition in life. And sometimes that's a result of ADHD. I'm not going to talk about ADHD as a cause of anxiety. I'll talk about that a lot more when we talk about our ADHD video. But some people just have a natural disposition that's higher strung, and they are needing to, on a daily basis, ground themselves. Find a way to reduce the amount of energetic flow going through their consciousness and going through their body. So I want to talk about the Serenity Prayer as a way to deal with anxiety. Now, whether you're religious or not, this prayer has the ability to help you get clarity about where your attention needs to be. And so if you're not a religious person, you can just focus on the parts of this prayer that are not about God. But I'm going to read the prayer to you. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. Accept what you cannot change means you're not trying to control or fix something that you don't have power over. Learning how to recognize and identify when you don't have power over a situation and you just have to be okay with what it is. The courage to change the things you can. There are situations in your life that you can affect and you can take action on that makes life better, particularly around anxiety, but also other issues. The courage to change what you can, to take action when you need to, And finally, wisdom, to know the difference. Such an important concept, to know the difference between when you need to take action and when you need to accept. Sometimes anxiety is co-occurring with other issues, like PTSD or post-traumatic stress. Trauma can really make anxiety worse. Unresolved, untreated trauma. And clearly the way to deal with that is to deal with the trauma. That's a counseling issue. There's some practices you can do in your life that will help trauma for sure, but I'm going to suggest that if you know that you have trauma that you need to work through, it's a really good idea to do that in counseling. ADHD can enhance anxiety, and again, I'm going to talk about that in another video. Substance use. Some people try to treat their anxiety through non-prescription medication like marijuana or alcohol or other substances. And quite frankly, they may get some relief from that, but the bottom line is it doesn't work overall. You know, people think of marijuana as a drug that causes you to be mellow. And maybe the first couple of times you use it, it does cause you to be mellow. But if you talk to people who use marijuana on a regular basis, they're some of the most irritable people you'll ever meet. They're not relaxed, they're not calm, and they're not necessarily effectively treating their anxiety. And alcohol, which is much more destructive to trying to treat anxiety, does not make the situation better by any means. If you're going to do medication for anxiety, have it prescribed by a professional who understands how to talk to you about the side effects, how to talk to you about the dosage, how to talk to you about which one would be correct for your particular situation. Don't try to medicate your anxiety on your own. Sometimes anxiety is increased by attempting to control or fix or caretake others. And we're going to do a video on codependency that addresses all of these issues, so I'm not going to get into the tenets of codependency, but I am going to say that learning how to detach from what isn't yours to take care of helps reduce anxiety dramatically. And if you are having characteristics of codependency, treating codependency reduces anxiety dramatically. And short of giving you a definition of codependency, primarily it's about not caretaking, fixing, or trying to help others when it's not your job to do that. You can care about others without caretaking them. Learning how to detach from what isn't yours to worry about or be concerned about or have to fix is a great way to reduce anxiety. Then the next step I'm going to say is to really try to find somebody you trust to talk to. Pick people in your life to talk to who you feel safe with, comfortable, who aren't going to judge you. That doesn't mean they don't challenge you, but they're not criticizing you. They're not telling you you're wrong or, you know, somehow blaming you. Pick people in your life who are going to validate and understand what your concern and what your fear is. Validate means simply they're understanding and believing the experience you're having, and they can communicate that to you either verbally or non-verbally or both. They're communicating to you that they get it. Boy, yeah, I can see why that's hard. I get why that's difficult. I see why that's challenging for you. And maybe they'll challenge you. Well, have you thought about trying this? But mostly they're listening. However, if that's hard to find or it's not enough, then counseling might be the next step. In counseling, you're paying someone to be a very good listener and to give you direction and to give you guidance around how to deal with your anxiety. If counseling doesn't work, there is medication. I'm not somebody who can prescribe medication, but I will suggest that there are medications that do work for anxiety. And there's a good evidence that both medication and counseling done together can be very effective. Some people aren't going to want to do meds, and I understand that. Anxiety is one of the issues that counseling can work with without meds. But if the anxiety is so high that it's so debilitating in your life, then medication certainly is an option. There are a number of ways you go about getting medication for anxiety, You can talk to a psychiatrist who can prescribe meds. You can talk to a nurse practitioner. You can talk to a medical doctor. I'm going to tell you right out front what I think. I'm a big fan of nurse practitioners because they take more time to try to understand. In general, this isn't true of everyone, but in general, nurse practitioners take more time to get a sense of who you are and what's going on and what makes sense, and work with you on the dosage and work with you on the right med at a cost, particularly if you're paying for it, that's much more affordable. Psychiatrists can do that, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them will spend very short time and write you a script pretty quickly. And there's a great book out there, which I will get the name of here shortly, that talks about how psychiatrists can be in the back pocket of pharmaceutical companies, where they are basically motivated by getting you a prescription and not so much what's really going to be the best thing for you. Not all psychiatrists do that by any means, but there are those that do. And I think it's important to be aware of that. However, I want to emphasize that counseling works for treating anxiety. You won't see that on the ads that the pharmaceutical companies put out. Quite frankly, their ads are going to say, is your medication not working? Here, try another one. They don't say, is your medication not working? Maybe you ought to talk to a counselor, because it's not in their financial interest to do so. It's not in my financial interest to recommend you consider meds, but it is in my interest that you consider all options you need to deal with your anxiety and find the ones that work for you, whatever they might be. I gave you a whole list of things you can do before counseling. Hopefully those things work. If they don't, counseling certainly can work. There's no guarantee it will, but it certainly can. There is a guarantee that it won't work if you don't go in and be honest with your therapist about what you're dealing with. Then it's definitely not going to work. If you have a propensity to be anxious most days of your life or most of the day, try focusing on taking actions on a daily basis that help decrease your anxiety. Whatever that might be. Whether it's grounding, whether it's going for a walk, whether it's talking to a friend, whether it's doing a mindfulness activity, whether it's identifying a belief and challenging it. Practice these methods daily and see if it doesn't help reduce your daily level of anxiety. Thanks for listening. I'm Robert Johnson. This is A Better Way to Good Mental Health, and you just heard our first YouTube cast on anxiety and how to deal with it.